From June of 2020 to June of 2021, I was hired by a company to be their full-time videographer and editor and create one YouTube video every week. One YouTube video every week for a year. And what that year provided was an opportunity to practice my skills in lighting and editing a ton. When it comes to getting better at your craft, practice and repetition can take you a long way. And so in this video, I want to show you the progression of the videos I made for this company and how I was able to improve with each one. And also, I'll be cringing a little bit at my past work, but hey, that's part of the fun. So let's get into the first video I ever filmed for this company.
Hey everyone, I'm Ian from OPT, and this is the Skywatcher EQ6R Pro Equatorial Mount.
So again, this is one of the first videos I ever filmed for them, and it doesn't look that good. I can see my thought process behind some of the decisions I was making in this video, but a lot of it was just poorly executed. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just good ideas, poor execution. I have a nice key light on him, you know, wrapping around his face well. The problem though is the hair light, and the hair light is so bright and overbearing. It's just completely going over his shoulders and almost like taking over his body. It's hitting his hand, and it's just overall very poorly placed. Let's talk about the background. It's not good. The background is just bland. It looks like an empty room. There's nothing going on there. I have their logo in the back, and that was my attempt at possibly filling up the back of the room with branding. But again, it's just very poorly executed because it doesn't look appealing to the eye. The camera itself is just not a good placement. You can see the ceiling up here, which also doesn't look that great. His head's cut off for some reason. I don't know why that was zoomed in that much. I don't know if I was trying to hide something from the top, he has no headroom. Very poor execution on this, honestly. Again, it was my first gig with them. This was at the beginning of the contract, and so I had a lot to learn. 2 out of 10 for this shot. Doesn't look that great. Let's move on to our next shot. What's up guys, my name is Rafal from OPT, and in this video I'm going to show you how to get started in astrophotography using the Skywatcher Star Adventurer mount. All right, so this was a little later on. We have a different background. We have a black background. It's a much simpler shot. Ultimately, this shot is already looking way better than the first setup. We have a nice key light set on me. The hair light is pretty good. It's not as overbearing as it was in the first shot. It is wrapping around my shoulders a little nicer. It's giving me very nice separation from the black background. And it's faint to see here, but it looks like I started learning a new technique, and that was shining a light onto the background. And it's a technique that I really like because it's a very easy way to just add a nice vignette of light behind your subject and just add a little bit of texture behind them. I don't know if I could have made it a little brighter just to make it stand out a bit more. I would maybe have pulled out a little more, but I know in this scenario, I was working with limited space. I was filming this in my old bedroom. There wasn't a lot of room with the black background. And also, I'm pretty sure at this point, the camera was right up against my bed, so I literally couldn't push it any further. But ultimately, this shot is significantly better than the original shot. At least I think so. So moving on to the next one.
In this video, we're inside where it's nice and dry, and we're gonna be going over one of the most basic and essential steps when it comes to processing your images.
All right, so here I can tell I'm starting to understand positioning the camera within a space to help find a shot that looks visually appealing, that isn't just the subject, but also has textures in the background. There's no blank wall. There's good separation between him and the background. The textures bring some nice visual interest to the shot. I do see some attempts at making it a little better. Like, for example, I added this plant off to the side here just to cover up the blank wall that would have been there otherwise. And I guess I just decided that the table needed a NASA mug because we were talking about space, so why not? And in this video, I can start to see that I started to understand not just lighting my subject, but also lighting the background. And I can see that I placed the light here in order to give a splash of light behind him. And the one thing I would say is that I can tell there's a light there, so it's a little too harsh. I would have definitely dimmed it down because it is kind of drawing attention to itself. It is a little too bright. I don't know if the light here was intentionally placed or it was a light coming from the kitchen, but either way, if it was coming from the kitchen, I intentionally turned it on to make sure there was a splash of light off to the edge of the frame here. Now the lighting on my subject is fine, but the one thing I would do is I would have moved the light from one side of his face to the other and just start lighting short side, lighting on the side of his face that's facing away from the camera. And that's just my preferred method of lighting. It's called lighting short side. And the advantage of lighting short side is that you're allowing the camera to capture the shadows on the opposite side of the face and therefore just capturing more definition from the face. You can light broadside, which is the opposite of short side, but it's just a personal preference of me lighting short side just because I like the way it looks a little more. But already going from this shot to the previous shot and the shot before that, I can really understand utilizing the background to make the shot more visually interesting. So let's move on to the next shot.
Good reason. It's a great camera. But is it worth the upgrade? Well, let's find out.
All right, this shot looks really cool. This is what I was trying to achieve in the first video when I first started filming with this company. This is way better executed. I was trying to fill up the background, I was trying to guide the eyes to the subject, and I was just trying to give some texture behind them. So one of the things I learned was he was way too far away from the wall, and it was making it difficult for me to just fill the background in a way that was appealing to the eye. So in this video, even though they're in a different room, I focused on making sure there isn't too much distance between him and the background, simply because it would make it easier for me to fill it with objects that can make it more visually interesting. In this case, we had a table with some nice things on his right and a telescope on the left, and then there were some soundboards on the wall that just helped add a little bit more texture. The lighting on him is good. I would say his fill is probably a little too heavy. I would have probably dimmed down the fill a little bit. At this point, I do believe I was using a light as a fill light instead of a bounce, but I would have dimmed the fill light a bit more just to add a bit more definition to his face, because right now he's very evenly lit, which isn't necessarily wrong, but I do like adding more dimension to my faces nowadays. I probably would have moved that table a little bit more off to the right just to fill the space up a bit more. And then the telescope, I probably would have moved in closer to the frame so that we can see the entire telescope. But just seeing the difference between the first video and this video, I can tell I really started to understand subject placement and depth way more than I did when I first started. And if I were to create an image that looked like this today, I would be very happy. So a very good leap between the first video I made for them and this video that was uploaded 8 months later. The only thing I do see about this shot is that I can see the reflection of the light in his glasses. If I had one at the time, I probably would have used a polarizer to fix that. I didn't have one, but ultimately, aside from that, this shot looks pretty good. So now let's move on to one of the final videos I made for this company during this 1-year contract.
Hey, what's up everyone? Rafal here with OPT, and in this video we are going to be talking about one of the best multi-purpose cameras on the market, the ZWO AS.
So looking at this video, you can tell that I really did fall in love with lighting the background of my subjects, because this is a look, again, that I still do to this day, where I pop a light behind them, shine it on the back wall, give a nice splash of light on the background, whether it's just white or it's colored like this one, and it just adds a lot more visual interest to any sort of talking head. I learned about adding things into the background, adding textures, which is why we see this cabinet on one side and the plant on the other. If I were to shoot this again, I would have raised that plant because it is a little low. I don't know if I had like a box or a case or something that I could have pop that plant on, but that's the one thing I would say about the plant is I wish it were higher up. And at this point, I love using plants to fill in the background. They just add so much more life into a shot, and so whenever there's a plant anywhere in the room, I try to utilize it and pop it into the background somewhere if it works. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to use it, but most of the time I use it. And then on the other side of me, we could see some more textures. We have some lenses and some doohickeys here. The one thing that is missing right now is just, it is completely blacked out. The textures behind me are not lit up. It's just black. It's not too awful, but I would have definitely added some sort of light onto the background, onto these textures to at least show what they are, because it's just shadows behind me. So there's really nothing adding to what this video is about. How long have I been filming? Almost 30 minutes, Jesus. In this video, I showed you guys 5 videos, but over the course of the year, I made well over 60 videos because sometimes there were weeks that called for multiple videos, whether it was a short ad or an announcement or something like that. And there were a ton of other situations that I found myself in where I was asking myself, how can I make this visually interesting, whether through a light or through a camera angle or something? And it was just finding myself in these situations that have me asking these questions and trying to figure out solutions, because there had to be a solution at some point. I wasn't just allowed to show up and think, well, we're just not going to do it here. I had to make these situations work. And I think that sort of forcing on creativity really helped push my thought process behind making a shot look much better, and ultimately just finding a way to execute on this project and finish it up. Because one way or another, a video had to come out that week. And so that wasn't too painful. Just to see how much skill had improved over a year is very refreshing. And I hope that this video, if anything, can act as motivation for you, that if you are feeling like you are in a creative rut, if your videos aren't to where you want them to be, if you continue creating and honing that skill and trying different things, you will get better each day. And don't forget the famous words that you have to put 10,000 hours into your craft in order to become an expert at it. So thanks so much for joining me on this little trip down memory lane. If there's anything you guys want to say about the videos, go ahead, comment down below. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy filming.